sound check, filling in for Bradley because he couldn't join us today. With me, I have Ethan, as usual, and we have Rob. And together, we're going to dive right into another week of the Overwatch League. But as always, before we do that, we're going to kick things off, as we always do here on WatchHaus, and reset our watches. Rob, let's start with you. What have you been up to this week?
Oh, I just got back from the Sin City, Las Vegas, on well Monday night, Tuesday really, and I've just been playing catch up. I've had 6 pieces come out in the last 2 days. I've got 4 more coming out tomorrow. Mostly TFT stuff. Did one of the announcements that we're going to talk about today, and there was another like small breaking news piece for League of Legends. So just been grinding that mostly.
All right, Ethan.
I have moved back onto my college campus and I'm doing orientation training right now. Hence the shirt, the half unpacked room, and the fact that I am like covered in sweat from running here between training stuff. So that's been very, very busy the last like 3 or 4 days. But as soon as it gets settled in, it'll be more busy, and then hopefully it'll finally settle down right around when playoffs start. So I'll be really able to tune in during then and get my Guangzhou writing back up to track again,
Yeah,
especially
for
because
sure.
they might make plans.
Yeah, and we will talk about that. Most of my work this past week has been kind of outside of the Game Haus universe. I've been actually doing some esports consulting for the research firm I work for. So that's been keeping me really busy, and it's been really interesting to sort of combine my two jobs like that. But I'm hoping that soon I will be back in the saddle, writing wise, and I'm looking forward to focusing on some interviews that I haven't published yet and starting to work on some content for the World Cup. So stay tuned. But before we get into the meat of the episode, there's a bit of news worth talking about, I'd say. A lot of it's coming from our friends on the Washington Justice. Just today, they announced that they found a new GM. It was Annalyn Dang, Ballin, who we know from social media with the Gladiators, is now the GM starting next season. And bouncing right off of that, the Justice announced yesterday, or maybe a couple days ago, that they officially parted ways with Fozix, one of their support players. What do you guys think about these two moves?
All you, Ethan.
All right. Fozix has not played since like stage one, so I think it was more of a why hasn't he been let go until now kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that this is a good opportunity of him doing stuff in the future, because him not necessarily being on the Justice payroll was a bad thing, but I mean, kind of a lot of people forgot about him, and I hope that he really gets into the T2 scene if possible, because it was kind of fun to see him on stage even when they were losing. As for Annalyn, don't know too much about her, but I did notice the other day when the Gladiators posted about her leaving, I was a little I was surprised because it was out of nowhere, but seeing that she found a new place to go into, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I would say for Fozix, I can tell you from, I guess, kind of inside sources, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the first of a few players that get let go. From what I have heard, there are some pretty rough contracts that the Justice currently hold. So I think that they're going to start looking to potentially release some players. Um, and make some noise, because I think this free agency is going to be about as crazy as we've seen. Most of the players in the Overwatch League are going to be off of their contracts from their first 2 years. So there's going to be a lot of pieces to pick up, and Washington is clearly starting to find some of their cornerstones that they need. And so, taking up roster spots with somebody like Fozix doesn't really make sense. So, be on the lookout. I think by, maybe 2 weeks from now, we'll start hearing a lot more potential releases from them. As for Anna Lynn, she's amazing. I am really excited. I feel like such an idiot. I'm such a moron. I should have known that it was going to be her. I should have known, because
Mhm.
I had seen Grant Paranjape, good friend of the Game House, tweet out that there was an announcement coming on Thursday. I saw that she left the Gladiators and did not mention anything about her next move. And as far as I know, she was the only person who was in a major role with the team that left during the week. And I should have put the two together and should have thrown it out there as a potential possibility. I think she's going to fit in really well with the Justice. What they've really wanted to focus on is the community and building up a fan base around the Washington Justice, especially in DC, and bringing somebody in who's got experience general managing with Team USA for the Overwatch World Cup and somebody who's been on the social media and marketing side makes a whole lot of sense for her. And as Grant said when he was on here for one of the recap shows, like a month or two ago, um, he talked about the fact that they really wanted to up their game when it came to social media and just their media and art in general. So she is a home run for me. I would give this move an A plus. And the Justice, seemingly ever since Grant has come in, are truly starting to make their right strides towards having an incredible 2020 season.
Absolutely.
I have a
Um,
question based off that, if that's for both of you,
no, go for it.
which is just you mentioned that Washington might be freeing up a couple other players, and I was kind of thinking of which ones would be most likely. And Otto, very sadly, came to mind, and possibly Hyanu. But I was wondering if you thought what you thought about the fact that Giannis and Sansa might be up for it because they did bring in those new tanks, but they haven't played with them yet. Do you think by the
That's a good
free agent
point.
season we might lose them?
It, oh, I don't know. Darby, you should probably go first.
Um, I mean, I don't know. Performance aside, I kind of always thought Giannis was probably going to be on the chopping block
Yeah.
once the season was over. I thought that was especially evident once they picked up Olseshnelli vote. Sansam, I'm not as sure about. I think they might actually. I could see them either keeping him on or trading him just as a backup
Mm-hmm.
because I think they've learned their lesson about kind of putting all their eggs in one basket when it comes to any position on their roster. So I really just doubt Elivote and Lulsish will be all they have for next season.
Yeah, and going through the roster, I think Sansam is a potential trade candidate. I think Guido is probably too, honestly. I think they run with Sleepy and Arc next year, potentially. If there's a good enough um, replacement for Arc, I could see them making a move for him, but we'll see. Stratus will probably still be there. I think Otto is almost guaranteed trade bait, or a release candidate. Lulsish and I think Elevote. Sorry, I don't know their names, but I did look up their stats and what they've done. I think those are the kids they want to do. If they don't think they're ready, though, I can see them holding on to Sansam and Giannis just because the synergy's working right now. They haven't looked great, honestly. They've really been getting carried, but at the same time, they could keep him. I think somebody next year will trade for Giannis. I could see it even potentially being Sol, honestly. Potentially try to fill something there. And then Corey's obviously going to say, and I don't know anything really about Hyanu, so there are a lot of moves that could be made for this team, especially I think, and the reason is I think most new teams this year did what the teams last year had did, where they signed players to a 1 year plus a team option extension. So if the teams decide they don't want to do those 2020 contracts, that's where we're going to really see some movement for these other teams. But compared to the teams, the original 12 teams, teams like Washington won't necessarily have to try to re-sign anybody. But if I had to guess, those would be my options.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
All right. Moving right along, this week also saw a pretty major patch go live on the Overwatch servers. We have Sigma and we have Rollock Beta, which you can try out in competitive right now. We've seen the impact of Rollock on the pro scene already, but do we have any thoughts so far on the new patch? No.
I
There's. Oh, sorry. You go first.
I mean I only got to play a little bit of the new patch. I think everybody's going to try to emulate what's going on in the Overwatch League right now. I think that's a pretty safe bet. That said, while people are upset with the way the Overwatch League is looking right now, I think it's kind of similar to 3-3, where right now the Overwatch League has found something that works, and teams are unwilling to change from it. I'm waiting for that team to maybe make that choice, or I'm waiting for a T2 team. I have heard potentially through the grapevine that there is some team in T2, potentially in Europe again, who is making a new potential strategy for people to use. I could be totally off base there. Maybe it's somewhere else, but I remember seeing something on Twitter where somebody was like, "Hey, yeah, like this team's trying out a new strategy and it might actually work." So we'll see how the Overwatch League reacts, or how I should say Blizzard reacts to it. But I will say that if the Rollock stays, with May and Orisa, and nothing really changes with Sigma getting added. Um, I think the Overwatch League and Blizzard may try to make a quick patch right before we head into playoffs.
Right. I think that Sigma is a kind of a minor change. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably going to be run as an off tank, but he's really just a less mobile diva in a way. Maybe one that does more damage, so he could potentially work with Orisa pretty well. But I don't know. There might be one team that really picks him up and really masters him, kind of like echoes of the Dallas Field from Stage 4 last year, where Mickey on Brig basically carried that team because nobody else knew how to use Brig in a position like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that if anything, it might be one or two teams really pick up Sigma. I don't think it might throw the whole thing out of whack, though. Who knows? This might not have been the best decision from them, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to who's grinding in secret. Although, honestly, I can't imagine Sigma being played as a main tank just from what I've seen so far. Like, despite the shield, he's just way too squishy.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think
No, he
he's
has to be off tank.
yeah.
But he's a really tanky off tank. That
Yeah,
said,
he's a very tanky
like,
option.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he really steps up into a, whatever we've been seeing right now, or if somebody's running bunker right, like he could really make a difference and change up to the meta to at least have, maybe three different tanks rotating out, which could potentially add for something like his ultimate, and something that I talked about with Connor, I think on one of the watch houses, when he was getting released, something we talked about is, I think with his ultimate, it makes somebody like McCree a lot more viable, and it also makes Wrecking Ball come back potentially into the meta as well. Um, Popping them all up and putting the mines under them where they automatically go down, I think that can be a really useful combo, and I think people have already been testing it out. So while I agree with you, Ethan, I don't know that he's going to be a major change. I think he makes it at least enough of a change to maybe see the meta shift to something that's not just so stagnant with um, one comp being run.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully.
We have been seeing a decent amount of DPS rotation, but tank rotation has been very stagnant with pretty much solely Orisa and sometimes Diva or Hog. That's about it.
Yeah. All right. I think that covers the week behind us. So now we can start looking at the week ahead. We're coming up on the end of the season here. Tragic, I know. But with just 2 weeks left, it's getting clearer who's making the top 6 and the top 12. We've talked here and there about play-ins over the course of the season, but I think now's the time to kind of lock in those predictions right before the rivalry weekend. So, Ethan, let's start with you. What two teams do you think are going to make it through playoffs, through the play-ins?
So this is conditional on the top 6 kind of being the current top 6, because if Hangzhou falls out, Hangzhou might have a chance of kind of playing back in. But I really do think that Guangzhou and Shanghai might have the best chances. I'm sure another argument will come up from Atlanta from both of you, but Guangzhou I have confidence in because they are really quick at adapting to metas, and Shanghai also has this fairly deep fairly deep roster pool, and who knows, maybe Gagori's off stage like just practicing Sigma in her free time this entire time now. I think it's really conditional on the patch, and I think that Guangzhou and Shanghai have the best chances of adapting. Atlanta's good, but I don't know if they're good, especially because they have like really good DPS players, unless FRD is just way better than I think he is. Because they haven't run Daco like at all.
I think they're saving the Daco Taco until the last minute.
All right.
That's a very wild theory I'm throwing out there, but I can't see any other reason that they are not playing him. So
they did it with Striker and Architect by having them like learn DPS in the free time, or with Paris with Soul or Soon and Shadowburn kind of practicing the DPS while Danye and Nico, is that the fourth one? I guess
yeah.
They had these two people practicing those DPS roles while the others were on stage. So maybe you're right. Maybe Daco is learning Sigma in his free time.
Oh God, can you imagine how
stuck on the
epic it would be if he just walked out on stage and was like, "Sup," and then just start throwing people around with Sigma? That'd be great.
I'm just really stuck on the phrase Daco Taco.
Yeah, huh?
Do you guys not call? I've called him Daco Taco on Reddit for a while.
I've seen the meme.
I hate it. I don't know. I kind of think Guangzhou is arguably a bit of a shoo-in at this point.
Yeah.
I think they'll pretty much definitely finish out with a 6-1 because all they have to play now is Dallas, and yeah. And then I don't know. I think they're looking like like sorry if there's any Dallas fans in the crowd. I don't know what to tell you.
Sorry.
They're all sad. It's okay.
It's tragic.
Imagine being a Dallas fan in 2019.
But I think Guangzhou has proven this stage that they can stand with the big dogs, and I think play-ins will kind of block that one in. My other team besides that's Atlanta. Like Ethan said, I'm going to be the one arguing that. I think they're a little behind because they're playing all their games in the rivalry weekend, but I think they've had some opportunities to shine, and I think if they put up a good fight this week, because next week's fairly easy for them, but this week they play Washington and London. I think if they do well this week, they'll show they have what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I agree. I think, since we're talking about top 8, it is kind of contingent on a couple different things. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't think they will. They obviously have already made it, but like New York kind of meh for me, but I guess that's kind of another topic. But I will agree with Atlanta. I think we're seeing a meta where one player can really carry. And I think for Atlanta, Erster's been kind of doing that. He's just been a madman from what I've been watching. And I think that outside of bringing out Daco from the deep depths and surprising everybody, I don't think they need to do that necessarily. Apologize for my dogs in the background. But I think Atlanta has proven that they can make it. Now, the thing is we're taking a risk by picking Atlanta because they still could totally miss out on playoffs. If they have 2 just terrible weeks, right, like, we're going to look like silly people. But they've been playing so well, everybody's pretty sure, and it's feeling like they're going to make it in. I will say this, and I think I put this when I was writing the power rankings today too. Atlanta is one of the teams that anybody in the playoffs at all should not want to face. They've just been playing on that kind of a level right now, and I would be scared to death. My other team is actually going to be Chengdu. I think, I know.
Is this the Rob's terrible pick of the week section already?
Whoa.
Pick of the playoffs.
Wait, let's be real here, though. Who is not in last by quite a significant amount now, and is potentially working his way up into the top 4 over the last 2 weeks with his picks. I just had more fun, right? I just was willing to go out on a limb because I could pick up some games, and then I had to stop doing that because I fell too far behind. It's true. Go look at my last 3 weeks, guys. I killed it. Anywho, I think Chengdu, the only reason I say that is I know they haven't looked great, but with Sigma getting added, if the meta does change in any significant way, there's one team that can, one of a few teams that can kind of adapt pretty well to it, and I think Chengdu are one of those teams. I have said this since probably stage 2. If they make playoffs, I would be extraordinarily afraid of them because you don't know what they're going to pull out. Because they will pull something out that we have never seen before, and I think at least to try to trip up other teams and get some crucial map wins in order to try to make it through during the play-ins. And I don't think there are many other teams that are going to be in the play-ins that are willing to do that. And I think Chengdu can beat a couple of these teams in a regular match, but then also pull out those surprises and make it into the top 8. Would not surprise me in the least.
All right. Take your word for it.
If they stay in the playoff picture, though, because Valiant could overtake them.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm banking on it. They got a game. They got a game on them. So
yeah.
We'll see.
I want to believe. All right, so now focusing back in on this stage, though, right before we get to playoffs, we got some games. We've got some teams on both sides of the spectrum right now. We've got 3 teams, Washington, Atlanta, and San Francisco, who haven't lost a game yet in stage 4. And then we have 2 teams, Dallas and Boston, who haven't won a game in stage 4. So I'm looking at these 5 teams, and I want to know, Who do you guys think is either going to pull off the 7-0 or take that 0-7 torch that Toronto is currently carrying from stage 3?
I'll start, I guess.
Yeah, go for it, Rob.
I think the Shock have kind of proven, at least in my eyes, that they are the best team in the Overwatch League right now. They're just really good, and they're having fun doing it. And they are. I don't know. They're showing that we thought there were a lot of teams that were meta-proof, and we've been proven wrong about that. This is one of the teams that we definitely have not been proven wrong about that. I think they have a relatively easy schedule. I think they walk their way to another 7-0, which I'm sure they're going to be pumped about. Basically, I think choosing between Atlanta and Washington comes down to their game, right? And I honestly think that Atlanta has some advantages. Like now, if Corey does what he did to the Titans, then that's this point is mute. But I think that if Atlanta can at least contain him on 2 maps, that's all they need to do. Just contain him, even for a small portion of time on 2 maps from taking over the game. I think Atlanta has better tools around throughout the rest of the team to make it, and then I think that they go on to win the rest of their games. For my team that loses out, I'm only going to pick Dallas. I know it's crazy, but Boston has 4 games in the next 2 weeks. I think they can accidentally win one of them. I'm sorry.
Despite their best efforts.
Sorry to Brock and Mallory, but I think that they'll pull something out. I forget who. I was looking at the schedule earlier, but I think they surprise everybody and pull out a dub. Potentially even in the first game against Florida. I know Florida's looked really good, but they've also looked atrocious throughout different points of the season. Not banking on that happening, but it could. So I think it's just Dallas because they also have a pretty tough schedule for the rest of it. So don't really see them beating Atlanta, Guangzhou, or Hangzhou.
Yeah, Dallas kind of got the short end of the stick this stage with their schedule.
If only they were good anyways, like maybe it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying by
just be good and this wouldn't be an issue.
Maybe if they were a better team.
Oh, that's a team, by the way, that's going to spend big during the offseason. I bet a whole lot of money that they are going to have almost a totally new team come 2020. Sorry.
All right. Ethan, go for it.
All right. So my pick is also that the Shock are going to be the only team to go. Well, actually, contrary to Rob, I think the Shock are the only team going to be going 7-0. I think that I am predicting Atlanta to beat the Justice, which we'll get into later. But that out of both those teams probably could win that, but out of whichever one does is probably just going to get randomly upset because Atlanta does play London, and that could be a pretty big shift right there. So I think that the Shock do look good enough that even against the Titans in the last possible week, I think that they're still going to go 7-0 just by having that immense roster pool of having like those 4 DPS players that you can just rotate out. And like an entire, well, not an entire tank line. They're only subbing in Smurf because, Nevix can't get any play time, sadly. That's very tragic. But I think that Boston and Dallas are both going to go 0-7 because I do not trust them as teams. Dallas is looking abysmal. Boston is not looking that. Never mind. Dallas is looking abysmal, and Boston is also looking really bad. We've said it before. They looked bad in stage 3 when they were trying to run 2-2-2, and really only kind of got a single win, if I'm correct, and like a random upset. Or I think they played Paris and got that reverse sweep, and that was their only win, or maybe one of 2 wins in stage 3. But their players are they don't have that carry that the other teams seem to have and that we've been talking about so much. You've got like Nero and Happy on the charge. You got Erster, you got Corey. These teams are making huge plays and popping off. There is no single player on Boston who I think could hold the rest of the team. Just the DPS are not strong enough. Blase is very flexible.
Credit so bad.
I wanted to. I'm really trying to give Boston credit, but they just, oh man, they look abysmal. Yeah. And Dallas, we've been new though. We've been new about Dallas. That's my take.
That's a good take. Yeah, I agree on Boston and I agree on San Francisco. So, but then I have a take, and I can't believe it's not a completely out there take, and I can't believe I'm saying this after suffering for so long through this entire season. I think Washington pulls off a 7-0 this stage.
Yeah.
If they get past Atlanta, it's not out of the question.
I think if they get past Atlanta, it's in the bag. Sorry, Kate.
I don't think the other. Yeah. Well, they only have Paris besides that, right?
Yeah, it's Atlanta and Paris. And I think Atlanta's going to provide a challenge, but I will get into that in predictions, which are coming up soon. I think they can take them on, and if they keep playing like they've been playing, like Rob said, if they just unleash the Corey upon their enemies,
God.
and have enough people backing him and Stratus up, I think they'll pull it off. And then they play Paris, which I don't have to talk about.
Watch Paris just accidentally ruin it, and everybody just melts down.
Like the Boston to the Gladiators, perfect like stage 2 stage. Ugh.
I'll never forgive Paris if they ruin this for me.
Never. No more baguettes.
Yeah, please baguettes, please. All right. We're gonna hop into predictions next, but before we do, we're gonna do what we do best here and present our weekly WatchHaus Player of the Week, brought to you by Planters Peanuts, the official nut provider of the Game Haus. Yes. Rob, who are you watching this week?
Watching
Peanuts now.
Watching Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut himself.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna watch Jonak.
Okay.
And I will say this. I wanted to pick a team that had these big games this weekend and could really have a player that makes a huge impact. I think the New York Excelsior are a sinking ship right now. I think they could be one of the worst teams in the league currently. Basically, if you play in the East, you're probably a bad team in general, but
whoa,
it's kind of true. Let's be fair. The numbers indicate. I think there's only going to be 3 teams in the East that make the top 12, maybe 4. So,
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just you're right, but you shouldn't say it.
All right. So Jonak, right, he is the MVP. He's probably, I think, almost unarguably the best player on the New York Excelsior. I think he's one of the best Zenyatas in the game, right? He has his own skin. And this team needs somebody to step up. Bad. They have to figure something out. Otherwise, they are going to get absolutely dumpstered in playoffs. I mean, not even fun. Like, most people probably won't even watch the game because they anticipate it being that bad. I think that the Excelsior I think they have a week off. Yeah. They got a week off.
Yeah, I was going to say that they don't play this week.
I was looking at week 5. Anyways, okay. Maybe he needs to figure it out during their off week. But either way, since I'm not going to probably be on here next week, my player to watch for the next 2 weeks.
Preemptive player.
That works, yeah.
Because they got to figure it out. All right, come back to me then real quick. I forgot they didn't play. I was looking at week 5 on accident. So, my bad.
All right, I'll go with mine. I'm going with Massa this week, who I think is actually playing.
You are correct. Atlanta is playing.
I think Atlanta's been looking brand new this stage, but between their ups and downs, I think Massa's been a pretty consistent part of their success. Mr. Atlanta Boot God, the Finnish Lucia. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a really important week of games for Atlanta, just between either ruining Washington 7-0, which they better not do, and playing London, who I think they're pretty evenly matched against. I think it's a really, really important time for them to figure out, or to prove to people who might still have doubts that they can handle it if they make it back up in the playoffs. So I think I'm curious to see how Massa in particular steps up.
With mine, I decided to go with Gushue because the Spark have obviously made the top 12 already, but right now they're kind of fighting for that place in the top 6. And I think that we've started to see a lot more of their players start to step up this last week. We saw Bebe, we saw IDK, we saw Godsby. They're really stepping up. And Rhea as well. I can't forget Rhea. Gushue really needs to kind of keep up with the rest of the team. And I'm not sure if it's communication issues, but he's really kind of just doing his own thing. And he started to look better, but he can't have the rest of the team just kind of carry him. So he really needs to kind of adapt to this meta, which is a non-Winston, non-Reinhardt meta, in order for the Spark to secure that top 6 position. Because I want them to get that top 6 position. I want them to get out of play-ins because I'd be worried about what would happen if they didn't. Given that their current state, they lost several games in a row and didn't almost go 0-7, but they were with Boston and Dallas in that winless team for about a couple weeks there. So
for a while.
Yeah, for longer than it should have been. So I really think Gushue needs to step up as well.
Mm-hmm. Rob, did you want to try again, or should we?
Yeah, no, I got one.
All right.
Okay, I remembered who I probably should have picked. Jonak, buddy, go fix your team this week. Damn it. Anyways, I'm actually gonna shift over to Gamsu.
Okay.
I think the Dragons are they're 1-3, right? They've been struggling. They've got losses to two tough teams and one really bad team. Losing to the Defiant, I think, really shook my confidence in them as a team. And they have all the pieces to be extremely good. They should be very good in this meta. I'm really struggling to understand why they're not playing as well as they should be. That said, they've got to step up this week. Like, they really need a good next 2 weeks because, as I was discussing with Atlanta and Chengdu, there's still a scenario where the Shanghai Dragons don't make the playoffs. If they lose out, it is potentially possible for them to miss. And I think that would be kind of like the worst thing that could happen to the Dragons, honestly. Like, they have such a great stage 3, and then they struggle in 2-2 and they don't make it. Like, I don't know. It just screams disaster. And I think Gamsu, and I've wanted to write a piece, I haven't had time to do this, but I don't know if there's been a single bigger pickup in the Overwatch League throughout the last 12 months, maybe more, than Gamsu going to Shanghai. I mean, that team has totally looked different. He's been the leader that they've needed. He's been the calming presence, the veteran, you name it. He's been on stages for both League of Legends and for Overwatch. He's seen what it takes to be good. He's got that composure, and I think that Shanghai really, really needs that right now, heading into this week.
All right, sounds good.
Better than Jonak.
So, yeah. Maybe next week, Jonak.
Maybe next week. Although that depends if they want to try next week or not, because they certainly didn't this week.
Whoa. No, they're experimenting.
Oh, yeah,
you're right. They were experimenting by going 0-4.
They're experimenting with not trying. It's all part of the
not
plan.
trying.
All right. So here we are, the part we always are waiting for, the prediction show. I regret to inform you guys that my reign has finally ended. This week, Sam overtook me in predictions, and I am no longer in the lead, but only by 1. So let's see if I can catch up to him this week. It'll depend on a couple of very crucial games. Besides that, Ethan and Duran are close behind, and I think there's some other people playing this game too, but we don't talk about them.
Whoa! Whoa! Now, let's be fair here. Somebody else got out of the cellar in a pretty big way this past week, finishing with tied for the second most amount of prediction victories. I don't know who we're talking about. It probably isn't me, but then it
Connor?
probably is.
We know it's not Kate.
Oh, God, poor Kate.
Don't bully Kate.
That's what I'm best at. She knows it.
Leave her alone. She's blowing up our chat right now. We appreciate her support.
Hey,
you guys wouldn't know because I'm the only one who reads chat.
Let's be honest here, right? Like, there are some of us who are willing to go out on a limb, and then there are those of us who win because they're unwilling to go out on a limb. Kate and I all season have been willing to go out on a limb.
You're experimenting.
Who was the only one to predict Florida's first win in stage 3? Right here.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was me. It was me. Because I went out on a limb. And once you're down far enough, like Kate and I have been, you gotta take chances, because if you just guess the same as everybody else, you're never gonna catch up. So that's kind of been the strategy for me. I'll be honest, because you guys got out to such a big lead. I was like, well, crap, I'm never gonna catch up. So.
Might as well have some fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some like really obvious picks. Brad, how dare you pick Dallas over Hangzhou? What are you doing?
Yeah, what?
Yeah,
What are you thinking,
Brad's
sir?
terrible pick of the week.
Brad's terrible pick of the week.
I
Brad's not
was
here.
I was I'm feeling confident. I mean, you guys are battling at the top, doing that cool stuff, right? And I'm just trying to come in somewhere not in the bottom two. That's my goal right now. So,
Yeah,
you know.
Kate. Brad was the only one to predict Dallas over Hangzhou, which is why I assume that's why he's not here because he didn't want to have to explain that.
Kate, if you're in chat, you picked Boston over Valiant, though. Are you one to talk?
Leave her
Yeah.
alone. That's a terrible pick, Kate.
Watch,
Anyway,
she's gonna
on
go
to
in
the
and change
actual
it.
good picks.
Yeah, maybe the predictions. Kicking off our prediction discussion this week, we've got a pretty exciting match in a week that maybe isn't as exciting as last week was. Two teams who have dragged themselves up the standings this stage. We've got the Washington Justice versus the Atlanta Reign. Ethan, who do you have for this one?
I have the Atlanta Reign, but honestly, I could really see it going either way. The only reason I'm picking Atlanta is that Washington, while they have taken some pretty strong victories, they've almost started to taper off a little bit. They went to that map 5 with Houston. I feel like they dropped a couple maps that they probably didn't need to. I haven't seen much from Atlanta, but if from what I hear, everyone's really talking about them as if they're the most dominant force right now. And I could kind of see this going very close, and I could honestly be completely wrong about this. But for once, I kind of got to predict against Washington and say that the safer bet here is Atlanta. It's not an easy pick to make, but I want to win.
It's my analysis.
I also picked Atlanta. I'm gonna stick with my prediction and what I said before. I still think that as a whole team, Atlanta is better than Washington. Does Atlanta have a player who's better than Corey? Probably not. Urser could maybe potentially get a word or two in, but that would be about it. I think that they're really, yeah. I mean, I don't have faith in the rest of Washington right now. I just don't. I think that that the tank lines, the support lines, I think go to Atlanta, and I think the DPS goes to Washington. 2 out of 3 is normally enough to win a game, so that's kind of how I'm going.
I hear you. I'm still going with Washington though because I want them to go 7-0. But I do actually think they can do it. It's not just that like I want them to go 7-0 and that's it. I think, despite a lot of people, I think it's easy to give all of the credit for this stage to Corey and Stratus because they're the big flashy sunglasses wearing game changers. But I think the rest of the Justice, for the most part, have kind of demonstrated they can like enable their team in a way I just I'm not convinced Atlanta can do. I think Robbie said that it's a lot of it's going to come down to them being able to shut down Corey. I'm not really sure I believe Atlanta's going to be able to do that, and I kind of think they'll end up cracking under that pressure.
I think it's a fair point. I don't know. I just don't see. I see Sleepy and he does well. I worry about Giannis. Sands. I don't know. I'm just.
Sensum and Guido are actually doing pretty decent, but
They're doing decent, but are they doing better than Atlanta? And that's where I don't know that. Now, to be fair, I've watched a lot more of Washington than I have of Atlanta, and part of my opinion is flowing from Connor to me as we talk on a regular basis, and he is like all on that Atlanta hype train. So I've watched some highlights and a couple of their games this stage so far, and they are pretty terrifying. I would not want to play them right now. So it's gonna be a fun match either way, though. Tonight's gonna be a blast. I'm definitely gonna have to stay up late, and I'm not happy about it, but that's okay.
Washington Atlanta's tomorrow.
Oh yeah, they don't do the 4
They only got 3 games tonight.
Thank God. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's game is gonna be fun to watch.
You gotta stay up for Boston, Florida, though.
Of course.
Smile.
I'll watch
Anyway.
a recap.
Anyway, our next match. 2 very streaky teams, one of which desperately needs to come out on top because the other one, it doesn't matter. Chengdu Hunters versus the Houston Outlaws. What do we think?
Chengdu's playing for more. I really think that that'll kind of push them over the edge. Chengdu has a tendency to go 3-4 because they've done that every single stage that they've been in. And they've got 3 wins already, so maybe they lose the next 4. Or they lost 1 out of the 4 of them, so they're on the right track. But with Jake kind of being wherever Jake is, and after Linkser and Dante played well, but not to the really level that they needed to in the last match, and kind of overall this stage, I just don't really think that Houston fits into this meta as well as people expected to. I think that Houston's one of the other teams, kind of like Shanghai and a little bit like Chengdu, that was really profiting off the triple DPS strategy, and switching to 2 has actually been a lot more of a difficult transition than most people were expecting. Like Shanghai is going 1 and 3 now, and everyone thought they'd be the best in the stage. I think Chengdu wants it more. I think they'll be wacky, and I think that Houston's just probably their confidence is a little rattled, and their kind of main shot caller isn't really there right now. So
it's actually interesting because I went with Houston. I was the only one to go with Houston, I think. But for the exact same reasons Ethan just said. I think Chengdu has shown that they do not perform well under pressure. I think because they have more to play with, they'll end up breaking. Where I think Houston knows at this point that they've got nothing to play for besides just doing their best and having fun. So, but I will say, do you want to argue with me first, Rob, or do you want me to just?
No, I want to hear what you have to say, because you might end up backing up what I was about to say.
Okay. I mean, probably not, because really all I was going to add was that I think the results of this game depend as much on the phase of the moon as it does anything else.
Oh, okay. Definitely not what I was going to point out.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
My moon watching days are past me. I will say that I think Houston puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on themselves, even when games don't matter. I think they always have. I think everybody's expecting them to do well. If there's a team that is more drained of just everything, I would say it's Houston more than anybody else almost in the entire league, because you can see the bottom 3 teams, even Toronto, are just playing for whatever. I think Houston tried to make that big push right in stage 3. They've had this ownership change, they've had apparently internal issues, they've had all this other stuff going on. I just think they're drained. I think they're ready for their season to be done. I think that's why Jake is stepping away. I just don't see them coming out ready to play. And I don't think their staff has prepared them to be ready to play either. And I think Chengdu are at least going to be like, hey, even though New York basically just gave us a 4-0, we need to prove that we can still go out and get this done. So I'm putting my confidence in Chengdu for that reason.
They're 1 and 5 right now in this stage, and they had a pretty easy strength of schedule last stage. It kind of felt a little bit like a bubble with Houston, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're another team I would kind of expect to go the way of Dallas during the off season, especially now that they actually can.
Yeah.
If they keep more than 2 people once this off season starts, I would be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
Dante Muma. Those are the only 2 I would keep.
Oh yeah?
Pretty much.
That feels like a discussion for a different day.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Bring you back on. But we're wrapping things up here with what I think is honestly probably the most interesting match this week of the weekend. Atlanta Reign versus London Spitfire. Rob, who do you think takes this one?
I also pick Atlanta. I've been a London fan for long enough to know that they will disappoint you until the playoffs actually start. So they don't really need this win necessarily. Let me make sure before I say something really dumb again. But yeah, I mean, they're almost a shoo-in for top 6 at this point. Whether they win this game or not, they're going to have a pretty good chance to make top 6. So I don't know that they necessarily want to divulge any strategies if they have anything that people might want to or might not expect. And I think that Atlanta just has a lot more to play for than London do. And I think that at this point, Atlanta may also be playing for a perfect stage. Or not perfect stage, right? They've lost once, right? Am I right on that?
Atlanta hasn't lost.
No, they haven't lost.
But they've only played 3
that's right.
games.
That's right. We talked about this. Sorry. Brain's not working today. So yeah, I think they'll be playing for the perfect stage. They'll be playing for play-ins. They just have so much more to play for, and they are that unstoppable train that everybody's been talking about. So, I think they take Atlanta out on Sunday, or they take London out on Sunday. Excuse me.
There we go. I mean, they won't be playing for a perfect stage because Washington's going to beat them.
Get out of here.
Anyway, you want to go ahead, Ethan?
Sure. I think that this is going to be that kind of upset that no one sees coming. London beating Atlanta after Atlanta kind of cements themselves as the best team in the stage by beating Washington and then immediately losing to London right after, because Atlanta has shown their inconsistencies. I mean, they beat the NYXL and lost to Guangzhou in one of Guangzhou's worst stages. I think Atlanta has gone so much of that high right now that they kind of need to hit that low. And I think that London is a very solid team. Like, they might have lost in that like ridiculous upset to the Florida Mayhem, but the Florida Mayhem were really showing that they were competent and no one really expected it before then. I think that London can probably, as long as all their players are popping off, I think that they could probably take it, because I think that both of them are so inconsistent enough that you could really say either way, but yeah.
But if Atlanta lose that game, then they're no longer guaranteed a playoff spot. If they win it, they're almost guaranteed a playoff spot, right?
And London needs to guarantee their top 6 spot.
I guess that's
true.
I don't know. I feel like it's
a tough
for
one.
them, isn't it? Like, I'm looking at it right
well-
now. They only have this is their last game of the season, and they're already 16-11. So I don't know.
Unless Atlanta just slaps and wins all 4 of their next games, I don't know.
I will
Well, they're still only
say
going.
the scariest thing that I'm looking at right now is the top 3 people in our predictions have all picked London. The 2 of you
That's true.
and Sam. So that's terrifying
It's-
me right now.
Yeah, I did go with London. That's a spoiler. I think it's going to be the closest game of the week. I will say that. But I think with, the caveats that A, Atlanta's only played 3 games, and B, I haven't watched any of those 3 games. I think, I do think London's proven themselves this stage in a way that I just don't think Atlanta has. I think their 3 games, like, despite how good they're looking, their 3 games have, like, it was against, like, absolutely getting crushed by the meta Hangzhou and then 2 teams who aren't very good. And then I don't think Atlanta is bad by any means, and I think they'll perform pretty well. I just think right now London has like shown that they can handle it in a way that I haven't seen from Atlanta yet. And as evenly matched as I think these 2 teams actually are, I'm still convinced London's the better team, besides that very bizarre loss to Florida. There you have it. That's what's on our minds leading into week 4 of stage 4. We're coming up on the end here, folks. And that'll do it from your WatchHaus crew this week, unless either of you guys have any closing thoughts.
No, we're hitting the end. This is the end game. It's sad.
We're in the end game now.
I know.
Yeah. I'm excited for playoffs, though.
Oh, it's gonna be fun. I'm glad to have been on. This is my first preview show, so
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is it really?
it's exciting. Yeah, you guys don't ask me to do anything.
I'm sorry.
I think now everyone from the preview crew has been on.
I think so.
Because Sam, Duran, Kate, Connor was on in the first week.
Oh, well, time flies.
We have officially shown you our entire cast.
Yes. And it's my first time hosting, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, great job.
Turns out I can only do that when Bradley's not hogging the spotlight. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a good time. With that, thank you as always for tuning into the WatchHaus preview show. Enjoy the games this weekend. Thank you to Ethan and Rob for breaking things down with me. My name is Darby. From our house to yours, thank you for watching.